welcome to Monday, welcome to Countdown Day, and this was a very strange topic because this is the results for the top 10 Transformers suffering from character fatigue. We've done similar lists before, ones that don't need another update or another toy version, ones that have been overdone and have too many releases, ones that we're just, getting tired of, but this is ones where maybe these characters need a break. Maybe they need to go away for a while, go out of the lexicon of the fandom for a little while, disappear for a little while so that they can come back renewed and refreshed, both in fiction and in plastic. But for now, we just don't want to see any more of these 10. The reason I say that these results are unique is because this is perhaps the most homogeneous, close-knit list that we've ever done. The top 10 Transformers that are suffering from character fatigue is the topic this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you are at it, light them up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. Helps me out a ton, let you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that's in the description down below, and also in the description down below. And if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon, see what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. So this is the top 10 Transformers that are suffering from character fatigue. No honorable mentions. I'm going to give you the list of 10, and then at the end I'm going to tell you the only other ones that had votes, because this was a very close-knit, homogeneous list. And parts of it I think are going to certainly be predictable. Parts of it maybe not so much. So since we don't have any honorable mentions, we're going to do as we always do, and we're going to kick things off with number 10, my friends, first. Coming in at number 10, we had one that sort of surprised me with Shockwave. And those that voted for Shockwave said, look, he's always a big bad dude, and when he shows up, things are serious. Whether it is kind of the, I guess, not well fleshed out version from the live action movies that had those weird worm things, because he wasn't the well fleshed out character there, or his very well fleshed out version in, say, Fall of Cybertron or Dark Energon, or even Transformers Prime when he brought the Predacons back, or going all the way back to G1 when he's little more than a commander on Cybertron that turns into a big laser cannon. While he's always a serious threat, a lot of times it's just the same thing. He's so one-dimensional. Yes, logic all the time. Yes, he's either really loyal to Megatron or he has his own designs and machinations to probably usurp Megatron. They very rarely talk about why he's one-eyed or impurata. That kind of comes in very little to much of the fiction. We don't know a whole lot about his days as Senator Shockwave across most of his iterations. We just keep seeing this logic-driven guy with one eye who does weird things, who's kind of antisocial, but is a big threat. Yeah, we get it. Time to move on from Shockwave, who takes the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9, we have a Unicron. Or you could use this guy behind my shoulder, or the HasLab, or even the one that turns into the ship, that deluxe one from Energon, Cybertron, whatever it was. Unicron has many versions of himself. In general, he is the big baddie. He is the god-level, devil-level baddie of Transformers. And that's true. However, whenever they're rallying against something huge, it usually ends up being the machinations of Unicron. I'm not tired of them, but a lot of fans say, you know what, maybe it's time for there to be another big baddie as the go-to baddie other than Unicron. What could be a bigger baddie than Unicron? I don't know. But fans are tired of everybody rallying against this guy. I want to see him rallying against someone else. Unicron takes the number 9 slot. Now, I find this one very interesting because number 8 is Devastator. And those that voted for him said, look, I get that he was in G1. I get that he was a version of him was certainly in the live action movies. I even get that he's had a life in the comics, especially with like Prowlestator and stuff, which was a whole thing. But man, oh man, I'm just so sick and tired of seeing him because everybody's doing a Devastator. You can't get away from the Constructicons. Whether it's the Fans Toys version, whether it was the ones that already exist like Green Giant or the Toy World version, whether it's the Studio Series 86, whether it's the Little Legends class versions, of which there's this guy, which is a KO of Hulky, there's the actual Hulky, there's the Magic Square one, there's the New Age one. There's 4 Legends class versions of Devastator. When it comes to MP, for a long time, Toy World's Constructor was the way to go, but now you got the Fans Toys one. I think that there's an XTB one that's happening. There's just so many. Even Robeson is getting into it with their, apparently, fully mechanized version of Devastator. I don't know. I guess there's a Devastator for every taste, but a lot of people are just sick of seeing the green and purple of the Constructicons. And for that reason, Devastator takes the number 8 slot. Coming at number 7, we have one that I think is very interesting because it's Grimlock. And yes, I'm using the FOC Grimlock here because he kind of fits the reasoning very well. People that voted for this said, look, versions of Grimlock have appeared in a lot of fiction. And they've been quite different. Whether we're talking G1, whether we're talking the Unicron trilogy Grimlock, which is a completely different thing, the Fall of Cybertron one where he's not quite a dimwit, the kind of green and black version from RID 2015, or even the Cyberverse version where he's jovial in robot mode and kind of a lumbering, dunce in dino mode. So very different iterations of Grimlock. But what people said was, you get lots of Grimlocks in stories, in fiction, and released, but you don't get a lot of the rest of the Dinobots. Give me more Snarl, give me more Sludge, give me more Swoop, give me more Scar, more Slash, more Scorn. Which sounds kind of ironic to say. But Grimlock himself, you can give the guy a rest. I get he leads the Dinobots, but even look at the 86 mold, which a lot of people said they missed. The 86 came out. Then there was the Shattered Glass use of it. Then there was the Toxitron use of it. Now there's the Blue G2 version, and the 86 is getting a package refresh. That's an awful lot of versions of that same Dinobot Grimlock mold. Meanwhile, the rest of the Dinobots being Sludge, Snarl, Slug or Slag, and Swoop that came out in the 86 line had that one singular use. Why? Because Grimlock gets all the attention to the detriment of the other Dinobots. And for that reason, a lot of fans feel like, give the other Dinobots some love, and like Grimlock, take a rest. And he takes the number 7 slot. Coming in at number 6, I have to ask, is Soundwave really superior? Because a lot of fans think, you know what? Soundwave's literally been in every fiction. Whether he turns into a cassette player, or a stealth plane, or a satellite, or a car, it doesn't matter. Soundwave is always known as kind of sadistic, kind of quiet, kind of terrifying, with ears listening to everyone all the time, and of course, his army sometimes of little minions. Sometimes it's just a singular one, like, a Ravage or a Laserbeak. Sometimes there's a whole bunch, like all the cassettes that the G1 version has. Then you have, like, the stealth version from Transformers Prime, that sometimes had a Ravage, sometimes had a Laserbeak. He is a big threat. He is one of the most renowned Decepticons. He is one of the most loyal Decepticons as well. But maybe it's time to give the communications director, I guess, of the Decepticons, the espionage specialist of the Decepticons, a break. You know what? I like this. Some people said, even give Soundwave a break and do some fiction focused on all of his little minions. Flesh them out. Give Rumble some more characterization. Give Ravage some more characterization. Let Soundwave exist, but exist in the background. Because you know what? We really don't need any more of them. At least not right now. And Soundwave takes the number 6 slot. And now a hush falls over the crowd because we've reached the ever coveted, ever popular halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we have Windblade. This is the first one that came out in 2013, I want to say 2014. So her existence has really only been for about, 10 or 12 years now. She was a fan-voted Transformer, and when she came out, she had this mold, this release. This was repainted into like a combiner hunter look that was very much like Fort Max's color scheme. She had another use of this mold that was recolored. Then we had the Titans Return version, and she appeared in the Titans Return fiction as well as the City Speaker. She was in the comics as the City Speaker. Then we saw her in RID 2015, and she sort of helped Bumblebee very early on. And then we saw her in Cyberverse. And no, she helped Bumblebee later on in RID 2015. We saw her help Bumblebee early on in Cyberverse. Even recently, she had a Legacy United release as well. So we've had, just by count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 or 7, maybe 8, maybe even some more versions, because there's some third-party iterations of her as well. But in 10 or 12 years, we've pretty much had a Windblade every year. And since then, she's sort of become a staple in a lot of the fiction. But fans also said that while voting for her and feeling like she needs a break, she's also kind of on a break now. Even though we had the Legacy United release, we haven't seen her in fiction in a minute or two, and maybe that's a good thing. She's a great character with a great head sculpt, a cool alt mode, and a great look, and a bit smitten with Starscream sometimes. But you know what? Let her rest. She's been very active since being created about 10 years ago. Let her rest for a year or two, Take Windblade out just for a couple of years and then bring her back stronger than ever. But for now, Windblade takes the number 5 slot. Now we're into the top 4 characters that are suffering from character fatigue within Transformers. And at number 4 we have the leader of the Decepticons himself, Megatron. And some people said, look, Megatron is sometimes a really bland character, sometimes a really dynamic character. For example, his Transformers Prime iteration was quite tyrannical and ruled with an iron fist until he himself became subservient to Unicron and lost his taste for tyranny. The G1 version even evolved to become Galvatron with a whole new body. By the way, people said stop repainting a body and calling it Galvatron when it's the same guy with a new paint scheme. If he's Galvatron, he should have a different body type and kind of operate as a different character, even if he does retain the memories of being Megatron. Some people said that even if you don't go that route, some of his character growth has been kind of good. And they point to him becoming an Autobot within the IDW comics, and they pointed to him retiring in the Prime Wars trilogy as examples. But at the end of the day, even with that sort of growth, even with all the wealth of alt modes that he generally has, Megatron is Megatron. We know the characterization, we know the personality, and we know what he's probably going to plan to do, because he's even tried to pull the same plan 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. Maybe it's time to put somebody else in the driver's seat of the Decepticons. Somebody that we wouldn't necessarily expect. And people that, said that and said, hey, maybe there should be a different leader of the Decepticons, really pointed, ironically, funny enough, to the Machinima series and said, what about something like Overlord? Because the immediate go-to for another leader of the Decepticons would be a Shockwave, or a Soundwave, or a Starscream. But what about something right out in left field, like an Overlord? Or, if we look at the Japanese fiction, Scorponok was, Black Zarak was, Dark Nova was. There are options for other leaders of the Decepticons besides Megatron. Maybe it's time to let somebody else take the reins and let Megatron rest and breathe for a little bit. And he takes the number 4 slot. Coming in at number 3, we have Starscream. Speaking of Starscream, and people said, look, he's just so annoying. It's nails on a chalkboard with his voice. He's such a sniveling little runt. He's a coward with a lot of bravado. He's been annoying since G1. He's been annoying right up through Prime, right up through, most recently, Earthspark. You can always sort of predict Starscream because he's going to be the runt with the big dreams, but no courage, that's what I'm looking for, to make those big dreams happen. Maybe that's true. Maybe Starscream needs a break and he takes the number 3 slot. Number 2 really surprised me because number 2 is Optimus Prime. People said, look, I mean, there's been a lot of versions of Optimus, but at the end of the day, he's always a father figure. At the end of the day, he always is the leader. At the end of the day, he always goes above and beyond. He's always brave. Whether he's an experienced leader, like in Armada or G1 or Transformers Prime, or even in the movieverse, or whether he's a more inexperienced leader, like he was in the War for Cybertron trilogy or Transformers Animated, as examples. There isn't a ton of growth to the character. Sometimes, some places, but in general, there's not a ton of growth to the character, and I don't know if many people would want there to be growth to the character. Optimus Prime is the father figure for a lot of generations, and it's nice knowing what to expect without having to do the guesswork. But, that said, maybe it's time to let somebody else, much like with somebody else taking the reins for the Decepticons, maybe it's time to let somebody else take the reins for the Autobots. There is precedent for it, right from Rodimus Prime to Starsaber to Diatlas to Fort Max, right? Maybe Ironhide could, you know, maybe Jazz could, right? There are, I'll say, lieutenants that Optimus has that could definitely take the reins. And maybe Optimus can go on a vacation on the beaches near the Sea of Rust? I don't know. But maybe a little less Optimus and a little more focus on a different leader of the Autobots. Character fatigue. Optimus Prime takes the number 2 slot. And here we are, very tippy top number 1. And this is not going to come as a surprise, I don't think, to anyone. Because number 1 is Bumblebee, of course. He's been shoved down our throat, whether in plastic or in fiction, for 40 years. I've never liked the guy since G1. I absolutely would have voted for this, and this is why I was iffy about doing the topic, because I wasn't sure I'd even have 10 for the list. Because I honestly thought that literally every single person was going to vote for Bumblebee. And not for nothing, Bumblebee did win by a clear margin of 150 votes. That's not all the votes he got. That's the margin between him and number 2. I can't remember how many Optimus had, but I know the difference between Optimus and B was 150 votes. Yeah, Bumblebee, shoved down our throat, easily takes the number 1 slot. There's 10 down to 1 once again for characters that are suffering from character fatigue. Now, there were only a few other votes. In fact, there were only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other votes. This is why I didn't have the honorable mentions, because I said I can mention all of these at the end. And they include Wheelie. Yeah, I'd say Wheelie has character fatigue because maybe he should never have existed. Wheeljack, that broke my heart, but I kind of get it in a way. There are other tinkerers and inventors in the Autobots that have not gotten the rub, you know, like, I love Wheeljack, he's my boy, and I don't want to see less of him. But I can't argue that, you know what, maybe we should see more Hoist, maybe we should see more Grapple, as a couple of examples. Jazz surprised me, because I don't feel like Jazz is in a ton of fiction, but maybe I'm wrong. And lastly, and I don't know how you really get around this, Ratchet. I mean, he's the Doctor. How do you get around the Doctor being there? I don't know. I mean, I guess you could use first aid. Pipes was a medic, you know, I guess you could use those. Those and no one else. That's it. That's everybody that got votes. It was a really, really homogenous, weird round of voting this time, for sure. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. Stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel, and don't forget, not for a moment, not for a second, that you right there, you do make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.